What is one of the biggest cases relating to the rights of the child that you have worked on, and how did it affect you?
There were a series of cases. It was more like a whole experience that I had, and that was when I graduated from law school. I graduated from Laval University in Quebec City, and then I decided to move to Guatemala. And I went to work with an organization that was working, protecting the rights of children living in the streets of Guatemala. So my work there consisted in reviewing all of the different cases of the children that were rescued from exploiters, from people who had either stolen, kidnapped, or taken these children away from their parents, or because they didn't have any parents and they were living on the street, they would take them and then exploit them and make them do forced labor and do very, very bad things. So that I think was the biggest not case but set of cases that I worked on in my life. It was also the hardest job that I've done so far because I saw a lot of very bad things that happen to children, and the way that affected me is that it completely changed my life because I was so fresh out of school, and it was basically my first job, real job on the field. It made me. I always knew that I wanted to work in human rights, and it just so happened that the first job was in children's rights. So it really solidified. It really made me feel sure that that's what I wanted to do, and that always in my life, what I was going to do with my job was going to be something that had to help either children or other people. So that's how it really changed and affected me. Those, the series of cases and that whole experience of me going to Guatemala and working, trying to prevent the exploitation and that forced labor of children. For example, there is an organization that is called Beyond Borders, and it's also affiliated with ECPAT Canada. It's called ECPAT Canada Beyond Borders. ECPAT is a larger organization around the world, and they also work preventing the exploitation of children. Also, child marriages and all of that. So they do work in the same field, and Beyond Borders is the Canadian branch, the Canadian organization, and they have mobilized a lot. It's a lot of women and mothers that work in this organization. Most of the people working there are volunteers, so they do offer their time at no cost, and they're really, really amazing. The organization started in Winnipeg, and it's now a national organization, so it covers the whole country. And one of the things that they have done that I really, really think it relates to your question is that the founder, whose name is Rosalind Prover, she mobilized, she organized and brought together all these people from across the country to put pressure on the government so they would make changes in the laws, and they would make stronger laws that protect children. So, for example, one of the biggest changes that they've done with the organization is that now in Canada, if a Canadian or a permanent resident from Canada goes abroad, goes, as a tourist or whatever outside, and it engages in exploiting a child or abusing a child outside of Canada, that person can be taken to the court here in Canada. So that is a very positive change that I think is very worth talking about. My grandfather was a lawyer. He was a judge, and I grew up with all of the stories from my mom, always telling me how he was very fair and he was a very just man. I never met him because he died many, many years before I was born. But he was my mom's dad. And like I said, I grew up listening to all the stories from my mom and telling me that he was an amazing role model, that all these people, would come to the house and always ask for his advice. And he always tried to help people. So I always, since I was a child, wanted to follow his steps and I wanted to be like him. So when I decided that or when the time came that I had to go to university, I decided that I wanted to do the same thing that he had done. So the logical step for me was to go into law school. At the time, we weren't really talking that much about human rights or this and that, but I just knew that I wanted to do something to help people, like my grandfather had done. And then the human rights aspect and field just came after the fact, because that's how I just sort of fell into the field, and I felt that it was the perfect fit for me to do what I wanted to do.
When you or other lawyers are defending a child against, for example, forced marriage or child labor, who are you defending them from?
You're defending children from the perpetrator. The perpetrator is the person who commits the crime. So it's the person who's either taken the child away from their parents, who's stolen it, or taken it from the streets and exploited, and who are exploiting the children. So you first of all, you're defending them from those people, uh, but also, and that's when you do the work in a domestic court. So a domestic court is when, for example, you go to a Canadian here, it will be a Canadian court, right? So if you're working within the country, then you're protecting them from those people as well. If you go international as well, but you can also do it domestically, you are going after the government, because the government at the end of the day is the one who's responsible for protecting children and for protecting our rights. So if the government in the first place is the who should have protected children from these things from happening. So if they can do that, then you can go after the government to make sure that they will protect children and that they will make stronger laws and all of that. So you, like I said, first you go, of course, after the people who do this horrible and bad things, but then you also go after governments.
That's a very good question. I have to be honest, not, I probably do fresh clothes and stuff. So, when you put it like that, I'd have to think about it. But at the same time, I know in the back of my mind, maybe I already have.
The second question is, what if we told you that if we take away their ability to work, they would not be able to eat, nor would they be able to help their families? How could you solve this problem?
I don't know that I can solve the problem, but if I heard of
Could you? Yeah, if you were able to.
I was able to. Maybe support an organization that actually met with the kids there, and maybe there were organizations or charities or churches or something like that that would be helping those groups work with alternate ways of living, maybe their parents or communities or orphanages, or I really don't know.
To child labor, would you still buy them?
No.
Um, what if we told you that if we take away their ability to work, they would not be able to eat, nor would they be able to help their families? How could we solve this? How could you solve this problem?
There are different rules and different cultures and different needs. It depends on the age of the child. If the child's 5, I mean, I have a problem with that. But in this country, let's say a 12 or a 13-year-old child would not be able to work by law. That would be wrong. But in some countries, maybe the mom or the dad is sick, and that is the oldest child in the family, and maybe they pick vegetables. Maybe that's what they do. That I might be okay with.
What are some of the working conditions that you are aware of?
Working conditions?
Yes.
For children or
For children.
for children? I believe there are some countries in the world, and I don't want to name names because that would be rude, where children are forced into labor at a young age. When it's not a choice or it's not for the good of the specific family and the parents are part of the decision, I have a problem with that. Like, they're working long hours, they're not being paid enough because they don't have legal majority of age. They don't have any law on their side, and therefore nobody can fight. Like, there's not enough people fighting to protect them, and that needs to be done. So I would say long hours, underpay, in some cases physical and mental abuse. I know are part of it, and that's not good. Doesn't matter how old you are, 5 or 50. That's not good.
I'd have to think about it.
What if we told you that if we take away their ability to work, they would not be able to eat, nor would they be able to help their families? How could you solve this problem? If you could. Yeah.
Do you have any easier questions?
Well, we didn't know.
Well, see, that's the big dilemma, right? In countries that are very poor, if you don't buy products, if you say you don't buy the product, then what's the solution? I guess child labor laws. That should be imposed so that there should be maybe minimum ages for kids to work and not force them to work.
If you found out that the products in your home were created by children through child labor, would you still buy them?
No.
2. What if we told you that if we take away their ability to work, they would not be able to eat, nor would they be able to take care of their families?
That's a tough one.
How would you solve this problem?
It's a very tough question. I think possibly government intervention might help. That's a really hard one because they need to make a living to live, right? To eat. So yeah, I think government needs to get involved. Maybe some of the charitable organizations.
Okay, the last question is, what are some of the working conditions that you're aware of?
Poor cramped spaces, long hours, poor pay, no human rights, that kind of stuff.